So you think professional looking gold work is only for the experts? Well, you can think again, because in this video I want to show you that even as a beginner you can create neat, evenly couched parsing in just a few simple steps. Hello and welcome back. In today's video we're diving into one of the core techniques used in goldwork embroidery, and that is couching. And we're specifically going to be using parsing thread for this lesson. So parsing thread is a fine metal thread consisting of a soft core that has been tightly wrapped in a flat metal. Now this lies on the surface of your fabric rather than being stitched with like you would a normal thread. So you'd thread up your normal thread in a needle and take it up and down through the fabric. Well, this actually sits on the surface of the fabric. Then to hold it in place, it's secured with small stitches worked along the length of the parsing, and these are called couching. And this gives you those lovely smooth, clean lines which we see a lot in goldwork. So I'll be walking you through exactly how to place your couching stitches neatly and evenly, and I'll also talk about the importance of our needle angle, and I'll share some tips with you to avoid common mistakes that we see beginners make, so that your goldwork can look great right from the start. If you'd like to continue the process after this video, I also have two step-by-step tutorials, one on plunging the couch ends and another on tying them back, and they're both really useful skills to learn after you've mastered the couching, which we'll look at this video. So if you're interested in those, you can click down in the description. I'll put links for them down there. Okie doke, let's get started. So we're going to look at how to fill our first shape with a smooth parsing. We're going to use a number 6 smooth parsing. You could use a smaller size like a number 4, or you could use a Japanese thread. It's the same method that I'm going to show you no matter what thread you are using. And here is our number 6 parsing, and this is stitched down in pairs. So we're going to stitch down 2 together at a time. And the ends of our gold is taken through the back of the fabric and tied back on the reverse. So when we're deciding the length of gold that we need, we want a few centimetres longer. A couple of centimetres is enough at either end. So I've got my length there. I'm just going to cut that. And then because we're stitching it down in pairs, I need a second one of those. So I put the 2 ends together and then cut the second one there like that. We're going to work with a single strand of Gutman's, lightly run through our wax. Again, don't do that over your work preferably. And we're going to work in a number 10 needle. We'll just put a knot in the end of the thread. And we're going to start our thread off at the top on the left hand side here like that. Now you could start at the bottom, you could start on the right hand side. I'm right handed, so it's easier for me to work from left to right, but if you're left handed you might want to work from right to left. You might find that a little bit easier. So do have a little play around and see which you prefer. And most people do prefer to start at the top and work down to the bottom. It's not always the case though, so have a little go working in the other direction. So we'll just start off our thread, cut our knot off. So we're going to stitch these down in pairs. We're going to take the 2 pieces of parsing and lie them next to one another so that I've got a couple of centimetres spare at the end here. You can see these couple of centimetres spare. I'm then going to bring my needle up on my design line so that the design line gets covered, and I'm bringing it up about 1 millimetre from the top of my design line there. And I want to bring my needle out nice and straight. Okay, so I'm not coming out at an angle like that. I'm bringing the needle up straight. Then we're going to take a stitch down on the opposite side of our gold, and again taking our needle down nice and straight, so no angles.
And we want it so that the stitch is sitting snugly over the gold. If our stitches are too wide, then our gold's going to move around. If it's too narrow, it's going to pinch the rows of gold together. I'm then going to come up again on my design line, about 4mm down from my previous stitch. Needle up straight, take it down on the other side so that it's hugging nicely. Again, needle goes down straight. And I'm wanting my stitches to sit at 90 degrees to the gold. Again, come up on the design line, about 4mm away. Lay the gold so that it's sat nice and close next to each other. And needle goes down straight next to the gold. Now that one there looks like it might not sit in line. So just bring it up there like that. So it sits 90 degrees. And this first row is the most important row that you're going to do because it sets spacing for every row after that. So take your time with this row and try and get it as perfect as you possibly can. Needle up straight, needle down straight. Stitch nice and straight as well. That one has just gone a little bit wonky, very subtly, but it's enough. So let's just unpick that one. I'll just bring it down a tiny bit higher up, a fraction. What we also don't want to do is angle our needle out from underneath, because then our stitch will be quite narrow and these two pieces of thread will end up sitting on top of one another. That's why we're bringing the needle up straight and needle down straight. And try and keep our spacing as regular as we can. And if your stitch is too wide, let me do an exaggerated version here like that. Can you see it's moving it around and it's not holding it down? Obviously that's exaggerated, but if your stitches are too big, that's what's going to happen. Your gold is going to move around. If we angled our needle underneath here like this, for our first row anyway, then you run the risk of it pinching and sitting on top of each other. Now obviously I've only got this first row in, so it's not really doing that. It would do it after multiple rows, but you can see there it's sort of been pushed out of alignment as well. Okay, so that's what we don't want to do. Stitches too small or angled underneath. And again, we don't want to do stitches that are too big either. We're looking for like the Goldilocks of stitches. It wants to be just right. You notice as well that I'm always, when I'm stitching it down, I've always got my left finger here holding the gold in place. So I never stitch it down without having my finger holding it in place. So I always know that it's in the correct position. When we get to the end, we have to sometimes space our stitches out. We want our last stitch to be within 2mm of our plunge point, and that way it's going to hold down the threads without them lifting up. If my last stitch was way back here like this, then I'll try and squeeze in another stitch at the end here. So my stitch should be here, and that's probably about 3mm away from the end, so we are probably just a fraction too far out. So maybe we'll bring our last stitch here like this. So it's a little bit closer to the end, but the gap there is maybe a fraction bigger than previous ones. And that's just so that the threads, when we plunge them, they're not lifting up. So that is our first row. You can see if I push my finger along there, there's a little bit of movement, but really not much. And that's because our stitches are nice and small. They're the correct size. They're nice and firm. I'm also pulling these stitches quite tight as well. So that's another reason why I don't have much movement there. We're now ready to do the second row. If you've got enough thread, carry on from the bottom and then work upwards, which is what I'm going to do. Or if you would prefer, you can finish off your thread at the bottom and start a new one again at the top, and then work your row again, top down to bottom. I like to go backwards and forwards because it's just quicker and saves a bit of time. So I've just prepared my 2 pieces of gold in exactly the same way as I did for my first 2. So I've got a few centimetres spare at either end. And we're going to lay it down in position, and we want to butt these up nice and close. And this time we're going to bring our needle up on the outside, so away from the other row of gold. Needle comes up straight, very important. And then this time when we take our needle down, we're going to angle it underneath the previous row of gold. So before, I've been taking everything straight down. This time we're going to angle it underneath the other piece of gold there, like that. So the angle of my needle in comparison with the fabric is at about 45 degrees. And what that does, it just pulls this new pair right up close to the previous pair. So we're not going to get any gaps in between our rows. Notice as well, I did put this stitch I've just done in line with that last stitch because I want to brick my stitches. So my next stitch will come up again straight on the outside edge. So needle up straight, and I'm bricking my stitch, so I'm going halfway in between my previous row of stitches. And again, angle the needle underneath, tucking it under, and pull nice and firmly with your stitch to hold it in place. So you can see now why your first row is so important, because it sets up where all other stitches in the rest of the entire piece are going to go. Still trying to keep them straight, 90 degrees to the gold as well. And when I bring the needle up, I'm really making sure that these 2 pairs of passing are sitting where I want them to sit in the finished piece. I'm not holding them out here and then putting the stitch in, because you can see they're being held out further away than where I want them to finish. So I'm holding them as best as I can in their finished position. Now if these start overlapping or pinching, it's probably because you're angling the needle out from underneath like that. So rather than bringing it up nice and straight, if you bring it up straight and next to the gold, you shouldn't have that problem. So don't forget, you don't want to bring your needle up in between your gold at any point. It's always up on the outside of the gold, down in between your rows. You can see that one there's not quite central between those 2. Just needs to come a little bit lower down. And this will be our last stitch of this row here. And then I've still got enough thread so I can come down and do a 3rd row. We'll prepare our gold in exactly the same way with a couple of centimetres of tail at either end. So these stitches are bricked again. They should be in line with the first row. That's what we're looking for. Now obviously we're doing a very basic shape here, so it's nice and straightforward. But if you're working on different shapes, spacing can vary. And again, I'm still bringing my needle up on the outside and angling it down underneath my previous row. And when I'm taking that needle down, I am not going through the gold in the previous row. I'm just going next to it. And again, pull those stitches firmly so that they're sitting nice and flat over the gold and holding everything in place. If the ends do get in your way, what you can do is tape them back with a bit of magic tape. Some people find that their stitching thread gets caught over them. I'll just finish this row and then I'll show you that. Obviously your 4th row, 5th, 6th, 7th row, however many rows you need to fill your shape, they will be worked in the same way following this same pattern. And then once your shape is complete, you can then plunge and tie back the ends. But you want to make sure all couching is completed before you do any plunging and tying back. So if these ends do get in the way, if you find your thread keeps catching on them, you can just take a little bit of Scotch tape, which is a low tack tape, and just tape it over the ends there like that, and then your thread won't get caught as much. It'll be a little bit easier to work, and then you can do the same at the bottom as well. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this has given you clear instruction on working our couched passing in the Goldwork technique. If you'd like to continue learning, then don't forget those 2 other videos I mentioned at the start, one on plunging and one on tying back. They are the perfect next steps after you have had a go at couching, so that you can finish and tie back the ends. And if you're really enjoying Goldwork, and let's face it, who doesn't, and you want to explore this in a little bit more depth, I also have a full deep dive course specifically on Goldwork where we cover techniques like this, and actually there's over 30 techniques in the course, and we go into so much more detail than I can possibly go into in a YouTube video. So if you're interested in that, there's a link for it down below, and join us there for some Goldwork stitchy fun. Thanks again for joining me today, and if you found this helpful, feel free to like, comment or subscribe for more Goldwork tutorials, and we'll see you in the next video.